So not only is this Irish cottage the home and birthplace of 1916 hero Seán MacDiarmada, it is a prime example of vernacular structure in Irish history. Firstly, in 1867, when the family came here to this tenant-farmer agreement in Corranmore, it would have been on the marriage of Donald and Mary MacDiarmada in 1867. They would have built a tig. Now a tig is not the full cottage, it's a small part of the cottage going from one chimney to the other chimney. And the other two rooms, the girls' room and the boys' room, would have been extensions that were built on later. One of Seán's chores in the house would have been to collect the water. And he'd go to Boylan's well, which is a well 2 kilometres away from this house, and you get spa water, and the only water Irish people would drink was clear water. They would not drink bog water that would come from the shrooks or the shooks from the bog. So it was a place where a lot of the children would go to meet, and youngsters would go to meet each other, boys and girls, and Seán did that job. And this is the can. This type of can is what they would bring off to get the water. This can would be for buttermilk or milk and the likes. And this one is what they call the canteen, which is they bring the tea to the bog, where Seán spent many a day cutting turf with his father and his family. Fireplace, and it's like the precursor of the modern oven. And in the MacDiarmad's house, there was a crane crook, as you can see. And here is the area, you see the cobblestone, that's the area for actually firing your food. So you could have 3, 4, maybe 5 rings like you would on an oven. You wouldn't be worried if you left the immersion on, it would be fine to leave that on. And you would also have the furnace at the back, that's why the belly is there. So all of the turf, as you can see, is in the back there. And it's manipulated out underneath these implements. To have your kettle on, you'd have your oven in there, you'd have griddle bread there, which is the fast form of bread you could make. If somebody was coming here, you'd make griddle bread in the pan, you could toast it here, you could add your homemade butter onto it over here and get a plunger of tea and a bit of jam from that press. So it would be very interesting indeed, like to be here at tea time, I'd say, in this house, you know. This would be very posh to have, because most of the other cottages that we know in the tenant farmer scheme that we've seen, some of them would have just a bar across and maybe a chain or 2 down there. This had all the implements to have it. But how did they have heat, and how did they add heat and reduce heat? Well, one of the ways was they had these here, which you'd get from the smithy, and he'd build it on there. So if you had somebody like Seán going to the village, and he was travelling off down to the village in Kiltyclogher, which is 5 kilometres away, we know he'd be away for a long time. And if his sister was going down, maybe Margaret, if she was just going across to the Ryn family and she was just getting eggs, she'd be a short time. So keeping Seán's food warm and Margaret's food warm was done like this. So Margaret would be back in about 10 minutes, so we put her food down here, down to gas mark 6, and then we bring Seán's up here, because we know it'd be a long day talking in the shop, and we put him up at gas mark 1. The whole place is very ergonomic, and this is the tig from this size here to this wall here. And then we have a loft up here, and that's bog oak that traverses the room across here. And some say the bog oak is nearly 5,000 years old, between 500 and 5,000 years old it can be. The roof itself up there is also made of bog oak, which is wattles that go along the apex that had to be rebuilt here by the OPW. It's like from if you were going to the garden centre and you were getting lawn, and you put down the scraw, and that's the first, say, 2 to 4 inches of the top of the bog, and that lays on the top of that. So the next stage is to put the straw into the scraw. So you get hoops of sally that you wrap around, and you put your bundles of straw and you push her into the turf. And that's what's made this house so watertight here. And it's so, you can see there's not a drop of water in here in 200 years or so. Old and Mary were first here, they would have slept probably up there in the loft before they built anywhere else. And if they had children, they would have a settle bed. And here they would put a lattice of willow around to keep them in there as a playpen during the day. Yeah. Over here, we have a table because there was a Cayley house. It would wrap up on the wall. And I've actually copied this table myself in my own house because it's a great idea. Over here we have pongers, which would have been made by the gypsies. And gypsies would be allowed to come into the house and make these very ornate beveled marks in tin. Over here we have our basketry, and up here we have our creels up on the top down here, and this is a skib, and it would be a strainer for potatoes. You would have your potatoes in this pot over here, and you'd bring it outside, you'd put it on the wall, you'd pour your potatoes and water in here and would strain it off, and then bring in your lovely boiled potatoes and lay them on the table here. Actually, press was built by Donald, like Sean's daddy, and all of these cutlery are all from the period and time and have been in here in living memory. That this is also, it's built into the wall, so it shows that it was an extension at one stage. It was. Here we have something very interesting. This stone here is for caling, and you can see all the marks here of the hobnail boots of people dancing in Shannon style in front of the fire 1.5 meters. Now the sound of the stone is this. This is sandstone. That's the sound. But this one, that's got the hollow sound. So the hollow sound, they say, is in ancient times they would put in the horses' heads, maybe 2 horses' heads, to get that hollow sound so they could dance to a rhythm. The dancing was done to a musician or else just to lilting that they would sing, and this was done inside the fireplace. I always find this picture fantastic, to think of hobnail boots like hitting here and sparking and shadows on the wall of this fantastic Irish dance, sean-nós. So it goes back to the ancient culture of the Irish as well. When they were going to Tír na Óg, the horse was very, very magical, and it could take you to the other world. So that whole story of the dancing stone is quite an amazing one. And here's one of the gun above the fire, which is a Mauser, and it's like depleted as it was in the thatch roof for so long, and was brought back by the OPW and restored then by locals. And so this is the girls' room here, and this is original wood that has been carved, and you can see that it's had its ornamentation put into it, and an ark is the great symbols of the MacDiarmada's, as they were very proud of building the bridges and also the pews in Glenfarne Church, St. Michael's. And outside they also have arches in their windows as well, and it's a symbol all around. Even you'll find arches over in the press door, and you'll find more arches here as you enter the room. This is a giant bed here, one big bed, and probably the biggest bed we have. It's joined together and had to be rebuilt as it was very damaged with woodworm and was redone by the OPW. And it's a very sturdy bed, but another example of the ergonomics and use of space in the cottage. So here we have Rose, that's Sean's sister, and that's her. Look at her lovely clothes, and it looks like a fauna that I think is on her there, so she was an Irish speaker too. And the tapestry behind the ornamented chair with, I think, a dragon's head here and a dragon's head here. And she did really well in America. And she used to help all the Irish people that came to Brooklyn and would bring them into safe places and give them jobs. That's Rose's room. and it would have been where the boys were, and had another fireplace there as well. There's many iconic religious pictures that would have cost the family quite a lot to have that are in the house. Patrick became a devout Catholic, and he was in extreme grief after his brother was publicly executed. His father and mother had died, and he held as much of the family as he could and farmed together. And this room reminds me also, some people call it the American room because of the American trunk that came back from America, well, probably with Rose, I'd say, at the time. This is James, and not many people know about James. And James was in America, and he was part of the Gaelic American. He was the editor of the Gaelic American after George Bernard Shaw had left. So this box would be a travelling box that was used to travel to America or anywhere in Europe. But the last one of these was in McGriskin's in the 30s for an American wake. An American wake was when people were saying goodbye to the children for the last time as they would emigrate. And their clothes would be put in this box. But people would also leave money. There would be a little party that would go on. It was called an American Wake, and there would be dancing and music, but the box would be left open and people would push money or gifts down the side for the journey. So when they reached Ellis Island, they could enter America.